So in this video, I'm going to lay out the 4 biggest cardio mistakes when trying to lose fat. Now, even though I'm going to lay out the biggest pitfalls of cardio, I am still a big fan of cardiovascular training when it comes to the right context. You have to obviously have the right training format, and you have to have the right format of recovery, nutrition, and every part of it. Cardiovascular is such a massive importance when it comes to your overall training. A lot of gym bros will tell you that cardio is not necessary, you just need to lift weights. But when you're looking at cardiovascular disease and how your actual, your lungs and your organs are functioning, it is massively important to get the right conditioning into your training. And that is something that we will touch on throughout this video. Number 1 mistake is thinking cardio is as effective as diet. Biggest issue people do is they focus on making sure they're doing lots of activity, lots of cardio, and then they eat relatively healthy. And then they still don't get the weight off. And they get frustrated, and eventually they just give up the fat loss journey. And I've seen that time and time again. So how do you navigate that? You then go from thinking cardio is effective, killing it in the gym, but then actually focusing your energy on what you're eating, constructing a nutritional structure that suits your lifestyle, but also hits your protein and fats and your carbohydrate goals on a daily basis that are specific to you, and this will help you guide you on your fat loss journey far more effectively. With that being said, your cardio is still an importance to your general health, as I mentioned, and it's still effective of general movement, so then it will then help your fat loss go faster and faster as your nutrition is on point alongside it. With that being said, you need to focus on 90% of your energy onto your diet when it comes to fat loss. Why? Because it's the nutrition that you eat that's going to actually help that fat loss. You cannot outwork a bad diet, and that is the most important thing that you need to remember. When it comes to other aspects like your training, strength training, your performance, your speed, body shape, with muscle mass, etc., there is other parts to it, but specifically fat loss, you're really going to have to focus on and dial in the correct nutritional structure. So to give you a practical example of this, you need to think about how many calories you can consume in, let's say, a 20-minute period, which, let's say, you're eating bad quality food would be 1,000, and then think about how long that would take to burn on a cardio session, would be up to 3 hours to burn 1,000 calories. So if you understand that math, you'll understand that you need to make sure your nutrition is the main focus when it's coming to fat loss. Obviously, as a whole holistic approach, mindset, strength training, etc., you have to have a massive focus on other things as well, but just specifying on fat loss, nutrition is going to be your biggest factor when it comes to dropping fat on a weekly basis and getting the body composition that you truly desire. Number 2 is overtraining to burn more calories. Many people will think on their fat loss journey, the more you work, the more you burn, and that is not necessarily true. You'll be in a situation in where if you keep training like that, as I explained to you on number 1, you'll then not able to burn the right amount of calories and you'll still not burn fat. Alongside that, you're going to be extremely exhausted. You're going to feel tired all the time. You're not going to be able to stick to your proper training program because your main focus is like your main strength days. You'll be tired, which can then increase your aspect of injury. And then also on top of that, you'll binge eat. You'll have maybe a week or 2 that you can stick to those heavy training weeks. And then after that, you'll then end up crashing, binge eating food, and then putting all the weight back on, and then leaving yourself extremely frustrated. So to fix that, you need to have the structure with training around 4 strength training sessions a week, 3 main strength training sessions, and maybe 1 heavy strength training session, 1 cardiovascular training session, which may be no weights included in that session, more body weight, more short distance running, and then you'd have 2 days rest. That would be enough for you to burn fat in terms of your training program. But remember, it is the nutrition that will be alongside that to make it effective. So to finish, understand that Cardio is still going to help your fat loss, but you shouldn't focus on as that is the engine of your fat loss. It should be coincide, and it should also just aid the process of fat loss rather than the complete focus, which is the biggest mistake people make, thinking that that is what they should be focusing on when coming to focus on fat loss. Number 3 is poorly timed cardio sessions. So that would look like you do a heavy weights training session, and then you go into your sprinting session to really raise up the heart rate for 25 minutes after a session. You have to construct your cardio correctly. But what does that look like? It would be where you go into a session, doesn't mean you can't do a cardio warm-up, you do your weights training, for example, and then you finish the session after that. You then can do some walking or your daily movement, which is fine, because obviously your daily movement is key, which we discussed before, but you need to make sure you're not killing yourself after a weights training session for 2 reasons. Number 1 is you'll end up not actually giving it your all in the weights training session, knowing you're doing more cardio, and actually the effectiveness, number two is the effectiveness of the cardio after will not be as good compared to not doing it on a separate day. So if you did your weights training on a Monday, your Tuesday, you did more weights training. Wednesday, you did your conditioning, so your cardio. Thursday, you did some more weights training. And Friday, you did a combination of weights and conditioning, which would look like not actually doing any running or rowing, but lifting weights with low rest times. You can still incorporate the weights training into your session, plus at the same time get the cardiovascular effect. And that is really great for body composition as well, because you're getting a great shape. Sometimes you'll see people who will lose a load of weight very quickly, and you'll look at them and you'll think, wow, your body shape does not look good. And why? Because they've not incorporated the right training structure alongside the cardio, and that is where people go massively wrong. With that being said, it does matter what level you are at. If you are at advanced level, this would be more applicable to you. To then differentiate your weights training sessions, your 1 rep max, 3 rep max sessions when you're lifting heavy, and then separating it into your cardiovascular, so for example your sprinting, etc., or even your low endurance cardio like your walking or your low endurance rowing or cross trainers, compared to a beginner who could do a mixture of both. They're going to have much less recruitment of muscle, so they're not going to be able to push themselves at such a high level, nor will they understand how to push themselves. So by combining the high intensity, so having cardiovascular plus some strength training, this would be beneficial for more of a beginner level, and they'll get better results. Whereas if you give a beginner the advanced style, which is just strength training on its own, you'll find that that client will not be able to push themselves to the limit they should to get the best out of that workout. So you have to differentiate, are you beginner, are you advanced, or are you somewhere in between? And that is going to be really helpful for you to be specific when it comes to getting the best results. If you're looking at a 90-day period, then you want to get the best results out of that 90-day. Where it comes to fat loss, you need to make sure you're not making the mistake of just doing strength training and no conditioning if you are a beginner, because you need to make sure the intensity is in the sessions. Each session that you do has to have high intensity level, even if it's strength training or cardiovascular, because if you don't, you're not going to get the right adaptation of your body, and it's not going to change at the speed that you want. Number 4 is cardio duration. So a common mistake here is a lot of people will kill cardio run for an hour, they'll run 10 kilometers, and then their hormones are all over the place, and they're not feeling correct. They binge eat food, they don't eat correctly because they're feeling tired and lethargic. It is a snowball effect of negativity. You have to balance this correctly. How do you do that? Well, you have to think of number 1 is if you're aiming for high intensity training, so that would look like intervals on the air bike or on the rowing machine or sprinting. You can keep that for high intensity as hard as you can for 20 minutes. This would be great if you're putting 100% effort in. If you're going for number 2, which is the long duration of, say, walking on an incline on a treadmill, you're then going to get that calorie burn for walking on an incline on the treadmill but you're not going to get the same intensity. So you're going to get a combination of performance and cardio when you use the number one, which is the high intensity interval training. As long as you don't end up stretching that interval training for, like, say 40 minutes, then you start overdoing it when it comes to cardio. And this could negatively affect other parts of your journey. So keep in mind, short term for high intensity and really go hard on it. And then in terms of the long duration, number two, is you need to make sure you're steady state for 40 to 45 minutes in that time. Keep in mind to finish is that you have to apply this in a level of, are you beginner or are you advanced? If you're a beginner and you find it hard to really push hard, then you need to think, well, I might need to do 30 minutes of sprinting, and then as I get faster and I can push myself harder, maybe take it down to 25 or 22, because you know that you're absolutely maxing out on that exercise. And that is super important. Also, on top of that, if you are someone who is not enjoying the training of lots and lots of cardio for long durations, number one is usually more effective, as it's easier on the mind for you to think, you know what, I can apply this for 20 minutes and do everything I can, because when you go to a training session and you know it's 40 minutes to do it, you know for a fact you're not going to end up turning up for it, or you're going to make excuses because it's going to put you off knowing that you need to train for 40, 45 minutes. So you're normally keeping to a shorter time period. So figure out which one is suitable to you. Start with either one, and then you can always chop and change depending. How would that look? If you want to do cardio twice a week, you can do some short-term sprint training once a week, and you can do some long-term walking once a week where you get a serious sweat on, you can put a podcast in, and you can listen through it. This is super important to get to grips with, instead of overtraining, which I mentioned in number two, is what a lot of people do and make those mistakes along the way.